Hey everyone, Darren Carnell here. Welcome back to my studio. Welcome to part 9 of the Kylo Ren series. Let me just check that everything is recording. The mic is on, the music is playing, it is actually recording. Okay, we're ready to go. Last time, Kylo Ren, we were doing more work on the face. We were doing some skin, we'd been adding the stubble. We're going to do more of that. We're going to push the stubble a little bit further back into the skin. We're going to lighten it a bit by adding a thin wash or some thin dry brushing, maybe probably a thin wash of skin colour on top of what we did, just to keep the work that we did but just settle it back a little bit further into the skin, but then add some detail by doing a little bit of flicking of a vague stubble colour that I'm going to mix. I'm not sure how yet, but it's going to be a stubble colour mixed with a bit of skin, just to be able to add some flicked speckly detail that always helps with stubble. Going to do some of that. We're going to maybe start painting the eyeballs, maybe darken the hair, getting ready to start making the hair match his hair. Even though it's black, it's very rare that someone has black hair that has no other colours on it. Usually black has highlights of dark brown. If the sun hits it or something, it usually has some different colours, and even if not, we like to add some just to, so otherwise you end up with a hairpiece that can look a bit Lego-like. So we'll do some of that, or we'll get ready for some of that. I think we're ready to go, so I'm going to bring the camera in and we will get on with it. So I'm in the right place. That should be about there. That should be about there. Now, let's see if those positions have changed since I used it last time. So I'm going to change to the second camera with me in the corner, and 3, 2, 1, bink. Here's me in the corner. Hello. That's actually not too far off. So if I move that a little bit over there, I'm going to turn the camera, whoops, a little bit that way. So I've got actually change those the other way around. On the kitchen roll out of sight, don't need that. The thingy, my brain is not working. The palette, well done Darren, you're an artist. The palette can be where you can see it, and I'll usually lift it up so you can see what I'm doing anyway. Brushes are there, all the paints are there out the way. For some reason I've got a bruise there, and I don't know how I did that. I don't know when that happened. Ow. Okay, so let's get on with it. Let's bring in Kylo. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got the camera in roughly the right place. If I want to do some normal work at a normal distance, where I'm not, peering over the top of my glasses to look super close up at something. Normal distance is about there. Yeah, you can see that okay. Let me bring up the webcam settings panel just for if I need to change something. Show panel. There it is. Okay, so camera 2. No, camera 1. And I can be zoomed in a little bit more. See, closer is better for the zoom, but it also makes it a little bit less sharp just because it's doing a digital zoom on the feed. But that's okay. I've been working on that there. If I want to show you something close up, I'll bring it up to there and change the focus. But I'm leaning that part of my arm sort of between my elbow and my wrist, that part of my arm against the edge of the desk there, which means I get a nice steady position and you can see it. Yep, that works. Awesome. So that's where I'm just trying to roll my chair a little bit closer to the desk, but it sort of dug itself in and it's not moving. Okay, so that's where we were up to. You can see the stubble is actually fairly subtle already. What I did do in between videos, since the last video and before now, I gave it a quick light blast of matte spray, matte sealer, matte varnish, just to push back the shine that it had in the last video, because it was quite shiny and that can make it quite hard to see what's what, especially on a camera with a spotlight pointing down on it. So I just made it a little bit less shiny so you can see what's going on a little bit easier. And you know what, the level of the stubble, I was thinking last time that it was too dark. It's actually not bad. That's actually not bad at all. Now that I've made it less shiny, I can see what's what. I actually think that's kind of perfect. Last time when I was working on it, when it was shiny, I thought that the stubble was maybe a bit too dark and needed pushing back, but it actually doesn't. I like how that is. But what I will do is do some flicking just to add some little tiny details. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. What colour do I want to do? Let's start with some grey blue, which, if you've followed me for a while, you will know that I used to use with these MP paints. The colour used to be called blue grey. Now it's grey, blay grew. You know, I said my brain's not working. I really meant it. Grey blue. But it's essentially the same thing. I'm just going to put a little bit of that out. I don't need too much. If it stops, that would be nice. Okay. I'm going to get some. Open the flow enhancer. I've got my water there. I think I will do it. What brush do I want to do it with? And I'll do it with this brush again. It's the angled, fairly flat one, which gives me a nice long controlled, you know, I can do that. When I do it sometimes with smaller brushes, I haven't got one that I would, there you go, a little messy one like that. You can still flick paint with it, but it's not as controlled. You don't get as much from it. You have to do more repeated flicks. And I just like how this one works for me. So we're going to do that. I will, however, use that rubbish old brush to thin the paint down. I think we're going to do some of that with some flicking and then add some black brown to it to darken it, and then do some more again. But for now, let's get a load of water down. In fact, I don't need all that paint. I put way too much paint down. Let's get some water. Chuck some water down here. Now normally I would get this grey blue, water it right down and use that as a wash, which is what we did to give the effect of very thin, very short stubble. But I'm doing flicking now, and I'm just wondering, with it being flicked, if that's actually not going to work in the same way. That's quite light. When you thin it down, it goes quite light. I think I'm going to add some, I was going to add some grey to it, but I will go straight in with the black brown, but just a little bit. Let's blob a little bit of black brown in there, which is essentially umber. Where are we? Difficult with the spotlight. There you go. So I've taken what was that stuff thinned down, I put a tiny bit of it in, but it's already darkened it right down because it's a strong colour. That's actually good. So I like how that's going. So I'm going to get a little bit of flow enhancer just to break the surface tension and keep the paint flowing as it's supposed to. got that nice and mixed up now. Chuck that in there. Okay, now when I'm doing this, I'm going to have to be careful here because, I mean, this brush might actually be too big for doing the moustache part, because that's got to be careful to not get it on the rest of his face, obviously. In fact, what I will do is have a spur brush handy for any stray blobs, any stray flicks that go anywhere where I don't want them. I can quickly wipe them off. I'm going to have to flick off the excess. So what I'm doing, where are we? Is just flicking off on the excess, so there's less paint coming off and the blobs are smaller, which means I can control it better. So I'm going to bring this higher up. What I'm going to do is raise the focus a little bit. So the focus is about there. That should work. Let me check that's okay. So that's focused about there. Okay, so I'm going to do this carefully because I don't want too much coming off. And I think this is going to be almost impossible for you guys to see any detail here because it's so subtle and I'm putting it on so light. Okay, that's quite good. So I've done some along there and the same on the other side. I've done a little bit under there and it's so subtle. I can see it. It's going to be difficult to show you. Let's see if I can raise the focus right up. So you see these little flicks here and bits on that side and the bits underneath at a normal distance look like stubble. Where's this focus again? Okay. Now, ideally, I would like to do some on his moustache, but I don't think this brush, I think it's too big. Okay, let's put that in there and be careful with that so I don't get that all over the face. Let's get rid of that straight away. Just dipping my hand into the water and rubbing that off. Okay, smaller brush that can work for flicking. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Alright, got a small rubbish brush here. I'm going to try that. Let's mix up some of that paint, get rid of the excess. Now this is a very different brush here. It's less flicky. It's not really working. What I think I'm going to do for that part is get a tiny thin brush. Let's get one of these Raphael brushes, and all the brushes I use, or most of them, some of them are just old brushes that I found anywhere, but the good ones are on the link that should be on the bottom of this video to my Amazon store, which is basically a link of all the stuff that I use. So you can, if you're looking at a brush that I'm using and you want to use the same brush, go to that link, you'll be able to get the same ones. So I'm getting one of these little brushes. Where's the point? The focus, I mean. Right, a little pointy. It's quite a big brush, but it's very pointy. And what I'm going to do is manually on his moustache. Where are we? Let me raise the focus up. If I put my elbow there, if I raise the focus. Where's the focus? About there. Okay. Now we've got the work that we did previously, and I'm just going to use the tip point of the brush to add some of this colour here and there. I'm not painting the stubble here because we've already done a lot of that work. I'm just adding bits of detail to it to go along with what we've done on the flicking. Let me check how much paint is coming off here. Okay, that's good enough for me. I'm going to clean that brush. There was only a subtle bit that I wanted to do there, but I wanted to add some to the moustache area, but it's quite a thin area and I wanted to be careful not to get it anywhere else. So I'm going to clean that brush, get the point back, put the thing back on. Right, let's get that original brush that I was using for the flicking, this one. Let me drop my focus back down, there you go. Let's get back this one again. And I'm going to add some approximate skin colour to this bluey grey, because I want to do the same thing again, but I just want it to be a little bit more skinny. If that makes sense. So add some water to it, thin it down. Let's get rid of all the excess. So it's sort of like that. I've just put that colour, which is, what's it called? I've lost it. Where's it gone? I've only just put it down. There you go. Beige red, which is my approximate version of the tanned flesh that I used to use. It's close enough to work with anyway. That, added some of that into the bluey grey that's there, which gives that colour, which I'm now flicking off the excess, making the dots smaller, just so I can add another layer of a different colour on there. Sorry, pay attention to the camera, Darren. Different colour, only it's not a massive standout colour or anything, but it's different from the grey that we did, and it's different from the skin that's underneath it, but it's enough to stand out. And when you're doing stuff, the more different things you can do, the better it is. And that's actually enough. That's all I needed to do. I was just adding a thin flicking of slightly different colour on those bits. And that's enough for that. That, I think, is the stubble done. Now, what can happen when you're doing stuff, while I'm cleaning my brushes, I can talk to you. What can happen when you're doing stuff like that? If you're halfway through your process and you've done a thing and you've done all your layers and you've done everything that you think you're going to do with it, and you go, you know what, I'm done with that, that's fine, and you stop. What can happen, and this is fine, this is allowed, this is encouraged, if anything, later on, after you've done different things, you might look back at that thing that you did, in this case the stubble, and go, now that I've done the lips, and in this case he's got that neck brace thing around, and the hair, and his eyes, and now that I've done all of that, the stubble looks a little bit too weak or a little bit too strong, or I'd quite like to get a lighter colour in there or something. And sometimes you notice things that you'd like to do slightly different once everything else is sitting next to it, and you only see that further on in the process. That doesn't mean you did it wrong first time, it just means that now that you can see everything else next to it, you can see that it will benefit from having something else done to it, and you can just go back and do a different layer, add something else to it. It doesn't mean you did it wrong previously, it just means you've noticed a way to make it better, and that's never a bad thing. Doesn't matter if you, even if you get later on in the process and you go, you know what, that thing I did was wrong, I'm gonna redo it. That's fine. If it makes it better, and if you can see a thing that you can go, I know how I can do that, and it will look better. And if you have to make another batch of skin colour and wipe it out and start again, fine. If you're not gonna, these are just toys. They're just action figures, they're collectibles, they're statues, they're wherever you are painting, they're whatever you want to call them. Honestly, they are toys. I'm not part of this crew that goes, no, these aren't toys, these are collectibles. They are toys though. Just accept it, they're toys. So, you're painting a toy, yes. You are spending a lot of time on it, yes. You want it to be as good as it can be, of course. But that doesn't mean that you're going to ruin it. You can't, no, thousands of people are going to die if you do it a little bit wrong halfway through and then have to fix it. That's fine. There's no bad accidents here. You can just, if you notice something that can be tweaked to be made better, make it better. So that's fine. So I might look at that later on and go, I want to add to that stubble, or darken it, or lighten it, or whatever. I think it's done. I think it looks good, and it's probably going to stay like that. So I think we're all right. So, wrong camera. So that's where we are with that. So stubble done. That's fine for now. Obviously this needs painting again. We did the original layers, but with all the flicking, that's got lots of tiny dots of skin color on it. So they'll just be painted over. I wanted to redo that edge in black anyway to make that a cleaner edge, so I knew that was coming, so I didn't care too much that that was going to get paint on it. So what I might do now, let's see, we've got to do that hair at some point, because his hair is black, but it's very dark brown. You can call it black, you can call it very dark brown. Black is just a really, really, really dark brown, essentially. But you look at his hair, whether in person as Adam Driver or in the Star Wars films, it is black, but it usually has very dark brown highlights. And that's what we're going to do in certain places. So we will need to give his hair another coat or two of black to darken that down to get ready for that. But what I think we'll do first is we'll mix some eyeball colour. I've got paint under my nails now, look at the state of that. We'll mix some eyeball colour and we'll start painting his eyeballs. So, that's really annoying me now, having paint under my nails. It just feels uncomfortable. Eyeballs, eyeballs, eyeballs. Now, this is where I'm going to be trying to find the right colour, because I've not done it with these paints yet. Ivory is fairly close, not exactly the same. It's not by a stretch, it needs other stuff adding to it. It's fairly close to the pale flesh, which is what I used to use when I was doing eyeballs. Pale flesh, as I used to use it, which obviously I used on the face, was my base for painting eyeballs. That's what I started with, because it's a nice, it's not white, because eyeballs are not white. It's a nice creamy colour with a little bit of yellow and a little bit of brown and maybe a little bit of grey in it. It's a nice warm base to start eyeballs with, because that's what they are. And I usually add to it either in the mix or on top of afterwards in thin washes a little bit of yellow or yellow ochre, usually I think I used to use, a little bit of grey, and then I would add grey and red colourings in the corners, sort of blended in to simulate both the veins that you get on the eyes, the blood vessels, like when someone goes bloodshot in it, but you see it even with people who are not bloodshot, corner of the eyes, you can see the red blood vessels coming in, to simulate that, but also in terms of the grey, to simulate the curve of the eyeball as it goes away from you. And those side edges, as you're looking at them, usually look darker. So and it's an exaggeration, but I usually simulate that curving away by painting the edges in a bit grey, and also there's usually a bit of shadow on the eyeball from the skin or the nose, the bridge of the nose or whatever. So the edges always have them a little bit dark, and it just makes them look a bit more round. Because at that size, tiny, tiny, tiny eyeballs, there's not enough distance of the curve of the eyeball to do that naturally as much as your own eyeball does. You'll get some, but it's not the same. So I usually exaggerate it a little bit. But ivory is a colour that I have. There'll be a colour that's closer, but I don't know what it is yet, to be honest. I've not tried to find it too much yet. I've got ivory, it's fairly close. I think I can add a tiny bit of yellow ochre to it and a tiny bit of one of my browns, I think, but a tiny bit. I mean, to be honest, I could probably just paint the ivory on as it is and be okay with it. Where's yellow? I did have yellow ochre. Where the hell's yellow ochre gone? Flat flesh, medium flesh tone, flat yellow, yellow ochre. There you go. Okay, so ivory, I think, with a tiny dot of yellow ochre. and if I need it, I'll pick one of the browns and add a little bit of that in. But I think that for now will be okay. Let's get these in each hand and shake them up. And we'll mix this colour, and we'll, you know what, I should have taken my hoodie off before I started, because it's boiling in here. Oh, right, that's better. So, ivory and yellow. Okay, let's get some ivory out. Let's put some on there. Oh, that was a lot. So it's going down there. I've got to be careful because I've got quite liquidy paint on there, that I don't accidentally lean on it with my fingers or my hand and then touch the head and transfer it all, because I've done that before and it's a pain in the backside, because then you have to clean the head before the paint dries. Okay, so what am I doing? Let's get a rubbish brush. Let's get a little bit of flow enhancer. Put that down there. Let's get some bit of water as well. So let's get some ivory in there. Let's get a little bit of the yellow. That's actually quite good already. That's not bad. I mean, to be honest, on my preview screen it just looks white. It's the ivory colour, but a little bit yellow. I'm going to add a tiny bit more. I've got to be careful because I don't want it to go too yellow. I mean, it's not final. I can just add some more ivory back into it, but I just ideally would like not to if I didn't have to. Now, the thing is, I've just realised I'm mixing this quite thin, and because it is so thin, I'm going to have to do multiple layers on the eyeballs. It's not even on camera. A little bit more ivory. Not enough. That'll do. Right, so now I need a decent brush that I can paint the eyeball with. It doesn't have to be super duper pointy or anything, but I want it to be fairly decent. No, not that one. I need to reorganize my brushes. I've had so many brushes on my desk and just allowed them to all sit there that I've sort of lost my organization of my brushes. I had them all laid out and I knew where my individual brushes were, and now I just have a pile of brushes on my desk and my brush stand. Okay, so we've got that colour. Now this actually might be a bit too thick. Well, not thick. I just like it to be thin and do a couple of layers of more watered down paint rather than quite thick stuff. We'll see. Alright, where are we? So if I raise that up to there, get the focus. Oop, gone past it. There you go. The paint that I'm using now is actually a little bit stronger than it normally is. I normally do it much thinner and paint more layers and build it up, but that sort of takes time, which is a little bit awkward to do when you're trying to record a single video. I'm just trying to be careful around the edges. Where are we? Get it back in the camera shot. Okay, so that's one done. Forgive me for going quiet. I do sometimes go quiet when I'm concentrating. Okay, so that's the first coat. Even though that looks super bright white, and it is, even though it's ivory and yellow ochre, you can see how white it looks already. That is not how the eyeballs are going to end up looking. That is the first layer of many layers. Now what I'm going to do is let that dry, and I'm going to thin down that paint some more. And I think I'll do that off camera because it's going to be exactly the same thing. What I'm going to do is get that paint that we mixed, the same colour, just put some water in it, thin it down, and do a couple of extra layers of that colour on top of those, just to make sure there's no uneven parts, just to get a nice even coat of colour where it's even colour all the way across the eyeball and into the edges and everything. And then in the next video we will start doing the shading of the eyeball itself, because it's not the right colour. Even though I've mixed it as a base colour, it's clearly too bright. It needs to be much more yellow and grey and brown, is essentially how it looks. So it needs to be more like that. So we'll do that in the next video. We'll start darkening the eyeball itself, darkening it more in certain places than others, and building up the blood vessels and adding shadow. I always put shadow at the top of the eyeball so that the eyelid is causing shadow on the eyeball. Now on a full-size eye, you get those shadows. On a little thing like that, they don't show as much. So I like, and also people have different lighting setups on their shelves. So I like to paint the shadow in just under the eyelid. We'll add the shadow to the top half of the eyeball. We'll add the shading to the sides of the eyeball. We'll add the blood vessels to the sides of the eyeball. We'll do all of this stuff. We'll get it to exactly the right colour before we start thinking about adding the iris and the pupil. So that's what we'll do next time. And then we've got obviously eyelids. We said the eyelids. Eyebrows. Eyelashes, which is an interesting thing to talk about because I sometimes don't paint eyelashes at all. I just paint a colour in its place. Sometimes I do paint them. Historically, I've never painted eyelashes because they normally look false painted on. They look too big, even if you do them tiny, and they can be done, but I've always just preferred, oh my god, my brain today. I've always just preferred, I've just realised I'm a little tiny Darren in the corner. Hello. Hi. I've always preferred with eyelashes, instead of painting individual lashes, which you can do, other people do it, I can do it, I've done it before. Sometimes I've done it, usually on women characters. What I usually do with men is, if you look at someone's head and it's at a normal distance, a normal viewing distance, especially with something like this, you don't see individual eyelashes, you just see the rough estimation of a shade. It's a bit darker and there's sort of a line, but it's not a flat line like it's been done with permanent marker. It's just a bup, 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 bup. And I paint that impression of eyelashes. I don't paint the actual eyelashes. Now, I don't know what I'll be doing on this yet. We'll get to that and we'll decide when we get there. So you'll be part of the decision-making process. You'll do it along with me and see how I decide things. But first, we'll do the eyeballs. I will just do another couple of coats of the exact same colour now. I'll do them off camera. Same colour, bit of water in, thin it right down, couple of thin coats on top, just the same as what we've done. And then we'll come back on top of that stuff and we'll start adding the shading and make it a bit more yellow, a bit more grey, bit pink, bit red, all of that stuff before we start doing anything else. And that's almost 3/4 of an hour. I will stop it there. We could carry on. I don't want these videos to be too long for individual videos. We're going to get through the work anyway. And I know some people have told me that if the videos are too long, they never start watching them because they don't have time in their busy lives to actually sit down and watch an hour and a half video. So it's better to keep them short, even if not much happens in each video, just so people can jump in and out when they're able to. I'm still holding this under the camera. It's so much habit now. I'm pointing to that camera up there and I'm going, okay, so we're going to do this thing. No one's looking. Everyone's looking on there now. Let's get this out of the way. There you go. So that's what we're doing next time. That was part 9. I will, as soon as I've pressed stop on this now, my brain is not working today. My brain is so not working today. As soon as I've pressed stop on this and get this uploaded, I will finish those extra coats on the eyeballs before that colour dries that I've got down there. And then we'll come back on part 10 and we'll carry on doing more of the eyes. We'll put up the first layer down of the hair probably, and we'll do some more stuff. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for sticking through 3/4 an hour of doing tiny little work, and not much visible has changed, but there is stuff there that adds to it, and at the end of 15-20 hours you have a brilliant looking head. All these little tiny changes add up. That's how we do it. So I'll see you in part 10. Look after yourselves. Have a good day. Have a good evening. Have a good weekend. Wherever you are when you're watching this, look after yourselves. Look after other people. Be nice to animals. And I'll see you soon. So take care. What button do I need? I've not used this thing for a while. Okay, there's my end credits button. I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.